The misfortune of the Janjua Rajputs of the Salt Range was never their courage, for each was a master of the art of war. Their fate lay in the absence of a Homer to weave their bravery into epic verse, or a David Benioff, or Wolfgang Petersen to bring their saga to the screen. This land waits for a storyteller. Its mountains stand silent, yet within their stones echo the battles of centuries past. These mountains are so ancient that even imagination struggles to grasp their birth. UNESCO declares the Salt Range to be 800 million years old. Once, waves of an ancient sea crashed here. It was through this land that the Nanda Pass connected Central Asia to the heart of India, a gateway that placed these hills forever on history's stage. Whether foreign invaders dreaming of Lahore and Delhi's crowns, or caravans of trade, all passed here. The rulers built fortresses atop the peaks, Malet, Katas, Nanda, and Qila Kusk, whose stones still bear the touch of time. From Choa Saidan Shah, district Chakwel. A winding road leads to the village of Kusak, nestled at the foot of a mountain. A tranquil pond greets you, flanked by centuries-old banyan trees, an ancient well, and a mango tree that has stood the test of time. Here, time itself seems to pause. This was no mere fort, it was an eagle's nest, sheer cliffs on 3 sides, and a zigzag path on the 4th. A 370-foot high wall, 2 gates, 13 acres within, soldiers' quarters, the Raja's palace, a temple, and ponds all carved from red stone. In the 10th century, these hills echoed with the ambitions of kings. Raja Mao, a ruler of remarkable authority, held Fort Mallet as his seat of power. The fortress, with its towering walls and strategic location, guarded the approaches to the Salt Range. This was a time when northern India stood at the crossroads of regional rivalries and foreign conquests. Far to the west, a new power was rising, Mahmud of Ghazni, whose military campaigns would soon reshape the region's history. The connection between these two figures was more than incidental. Fort Mallet, and the lands it commanded, became an important backdrop in the chessboard of power, where local rulers and foreign invaders vied for control. It was here, in the shadow of these cliffs, that the story of courage, strategy, and legacy began to unfold. Raja Mao's lineage continued through his sons, Veer and Jad, brothers bound by blood, but divided by ambition. As time passed, the unity of their inheritance fractured. Veer sought to secure his own dominion, and from his vision rose Fort Makela, a bastion of strength overlooking the valleys below. It was more than a fortress. It was a statement of power, independence, and identity. Built with skill and resilience, Makela's walls were meant to withstand siege and symbolize permanence. Yet behind the grandeur lay the human story of rivalry, ambition, and the shaping of territories that would influence the political landscape of the Salt Range for generations. Fort Kusak, standing silent amidst the hills, holds within its stones a mystery yet unsolved. Who built it? The chronicles speak in fragments, and the truth is clouded by time. Some historians see the hand of the same builders who raised the mighty Fort Nandana, pointing to striking similarities in architecture. The shape of the walls, the placement of gates, the layout of the inner chambers. Others argue for a separate origin, tied to local rulers whose names are now almost lost. The mystery deepens with every clue, for here, history blends with legend. To walk through Kusak's ruins is to step into a riddle, left behind by an age when stone and strategy were the language of power. Water was life for Qila Kusk, and the builders knew it. Ingenious stone-carved channels guided rainwater into large underground cisterns, ensuring a constant supply even during dry months. These systems were not just for drinking but also for agriculture, helping the fortress sustain its people and animals through harsh seasons. Looking at the precision of these channels, one wonders about the forgotten engineers who designed them centuries ago. The water management here speaks of foresight and planning skills often overlooked when we think of medieval warfare. This was a fortress, not just built to withstand attack, but to survive isolation. Every drop was precious, and every drain a piece of strategic genius. From the watchtowers of Qila Kusk, one could see for miles in every direction. These towers were the fortress's eyes, scanning the horizon for approaching armies, traders, or even dust storms. The height and placement of each tower were deliberate, ensuring there were no blind spots. Guards stationed here would relay signals to the garrison below, sometimes with flags, sometimes with fires. In a world without telegraphs or radios, these towers were the communication lifeline. Today, standing atop these ruins, you can still feel the same winds that carried warnings centuries ago. And imagine the tense moments when every shadow on the horizon could mean danger. Legends speak of secret passages beneath Qila Kusk, carved into the bedrock to serve as escape routes or supply lines. Some connected the fortress to nearby streams, others to safe houses hidden in the hills. These passages allowed defenders to move unseen during sieges, to bring in food or to evacuate the wounded. Walking through them today, you can feel the damp air and hear the echo of your own footsteps, imagining the hurried movements of soldiers in the dark. Such features were the silent insurance of survival, meant to be used only when the fortress's main defenses were close to falling. Qila Kusk was more than a military stronghold, it was a living community. Within its walls, markets thrived, artisans worked, and families built their lives. Blacksmiths forged weapons, not just for defense, but also for trade. Musicians and poets found audiences eager for stories and songs. In times of peace, the fortress was a hub of culture and economy, its walls ringing with laughter and bargaining. The smell of cooked meals, the clink of coins, and the rhythm of drums all painted a vivid portrait of daily life. Now, walking through the silent ruins, it's hard to imagine the vibrant heartbeat that once echoed here. In 1894, a British literary magazine, The Spectator, cast its gaze far from London's foggy streets to the sunlit hills of the Salt Range. Within its pages, Fort Kusk emerged not merely as a relic, but as a symbol of martial defiance. The article wove history with romantic imagery, recounting the fortress's military past with a blend of fact and narrative flourish. It spoke of warriors who stood against odds, of stone walls that defied siege, and of a landscape that demanded respect. This Victorian portrayal was more than just reportage. It was an interpretation shaped by the era's fascination with the exotic and the heroic, ensuring that Kusk's story would echo in minds far beyond its own horizon. Among the names etched in Kusk's history, Sultan Fatih Muhammad Khan stands as both warrior and gentleman. He ruled not merely with strength, but with an unshakable sense of honor. His leadership combined military discipline with an open-handed generosity that made him a beloved figure. Guests to his court were welcomed with warmth and fed as if they were kin. Yet behind this hospitality lay a keen mind, ever watchful of threats to his realm. In times of peace, he was a gracious host. In times of war, a commander whose courage inspired loyalty. To understand Kusk's later history is to understand the character of this remarkable man, whose choices would soon be tested in the crucible of conflict. The lifeblood of this region was its salt. For centuries, the wealth drawn from these hills sustained kingdoms and armed their defenders. But salt was not only a resource, it was a price to be taxed, controlled, and fought over. A dispute arose when the Sikh governor demanded a share far beyond custom. His message arrived at Fort Kusk, formal yet laced with warning. Sultan Fateh Muhammad Khan read it in silence, understanding the challenge before him. This was more than a matter of trade. It was a question of sovereignty. To yield would mean surrendering the independence his ancestors had fought to preserve. To resist would invite confrontation with one of the most formidable powers of the age. The answer came not in words, but in action. When the Sikh governor arrived at Kusk's eastern approach, it was under the flag of negotiation. Yet, within the fortress, a very different plan was set in motion. In a move as shocking as it was deliberate, the governor and his men were seized and cast from the sheer drop of the eastern cliffs. The message was unmistakable. Kusk would not bow. The psychological impact was immediate. Fear rippled through the Sikh ranks. The hills themselves seemed to whisper of danger, of an enemy who fought not by the rules of courts and treaties, but by the raw laws of defiance. In Lahore, the news reached the Lion of Punjab. Maharaja Ranjit Singh was not a man to leave such defiance unanswered. He ordered a campaign with precision and force. 18 cannons were readied, crews drilled by European officers who had brought with them the latest in siegecraft. Alongside them marched the Khalsa army, veterans of campaigns across the Punjab. Their banners caught the wind, their boots stirred the dust of the mountain roads. The mission was clear: to break the walls of Kusk and the will of the man who held it. Yet, the Salt Range had a way of humbling even the mightiest. When the cannons roared, the valley shook. Shell after shell pounded the fortress walls, but the red stone of Kusk was unyielding, built on rock with foundations as old as the hills themselves. the fort turned aside the blows as if they were no more than summer storms. The Sikh artillery crews adjusted their angles, increased their fire, but the results were the same. A haze of smoke and dust, and walls that still stood proud. The defenders, watching from the battlements, knew the fortress's greatest strength was not only its stone, but the spirit of those who held it. Denied victory through bombardment, the Khalsa commanders turned to the oldest strategy in warfare, the direct assault. 3 times their soldiers surged toward the walls. Ladders were raised, shields locked, battle cries echoing in the air. 3 times they were thrown back. From above, Kusak's defenders rained down arrows, stones, and boiling water. The fort's gates remained shut, its walls unbreached. By the 3rd attempt, the cost in lives and morale was heavy. The lesson was becoming clear. Kusak could not be taken by force of arms alone. Something else would have to break before the fortress did. In an act that would be remembered for centuries, the Sultan chose not to imprison the captured soldiers, nor to use them as bargaining tools. Instead, he stood before the court and placed shawls of honor over their shoulders, a symbol of dignity and respect. This was not weakness, but wisdom. By treating his adversaries as human beings first and enemies second, the Sultan sent a powerful message. True strength lies not in destroying one's foes, but in winning their hearts. The 2 soldiers, humbled and astonished, left the court with gratitude in their eyes, carrying with them a story that would echo far beyond the battlefield. As the days dragged on, a different enemy emerged. Thirst, the once dependable reservoir, lay dry, its surface broken like the earth's own skin. Both armies felt the grip of scarcity. Water became more precious than gold, and the realization struck leaders on both sides. No victory was worth dying of thirst. In a rare moment of shared vulnerability, messengers were sent to negotiate a ceasefire. The air inside the neutral tent was tense, yet necessity forged a fragile understanding. Survival, for the first time, outweighed ambition. The agreement was sealed with careful words and solemn handshakes. Then, as if nature itself had been listening, the sky broke open. Rain fell in torrents, drenching the dry earth, washing away dust and despair alike. Soldiers ran out in joy, catching the water in their hands, filling their pots. Some turned to the Sultan, urging him to reconsider now that water was no longer scarce. The events of that fateful campaign left a mark far deeper than the scars on Qila Kusk's walls. The Sultan's choices became lessons in honor, restraint, and the humanity that can survive even in war. Today, the fort stands as both a monument and a memory. Its weathered stones have witnessed centuries of change, yet they still echo with the voices of that time. Visitors walk these paths unaware that each step falls where soldiers once stood, where decisions shaped not just battles, but the very soul of leadership. Qila Kusk endures, a guardian of history and a reminder of the values that outlive empires. Over the centuries, Qila Kusk's role shifted. Once a vital military and cultural hub, it gradually faded from importance as new powers rose and trade routes changed. Without the constant upkeep of its walls and systems, nature began to reclaim it. Roofs caved in, weeds sprouted in the courtyards, and birds took shelter in the watchtowers. Yet even in its decline, the fortress remains a silent witness to the tides of history. It tells us that strength is not just in walls or weapons, but in the people and purpose that give them life.